Memory items for Airbus A320 emergency descent. The core of all memory items may be found in Flight Crew Operational Manual Section Abnormal and Emergency Procedures, Section Emergency Descent. For more expandable information, refer to Flight Crew Technical Manual, Abnormal and Emergency Procedures, Section Emergency Descent. The emergency descent initiation is the flight crew decision. The emergency descent should only be initiated on positive confirmation that cabin altitude and rate of climb are excessive and uncontrollable. However, the flight crew must rely on the cabin pressure excessive cabin altitude warning, even if not confirmed on the cabin pressure system display page. The cabin pressure excessive cabin altitude warning can be triggered by a cabin pressure sensor, different from the one used to control the pressure and display the cabin altitude on the system display. The flight crew should perform the actions of the emergency descent in 2 steps. First step, also called an immediate action, is applying as the memory items. Second step, described in the QRH as a when descent established part, means the read and do procedure from ECAM or QRH. During the first step, the pilot monitoring should focus on monitoring the FMA to ensure that the pilot flying had correctly established the aircraft in descent. During the second step, the pilot flying should refine the settings. To initiate the emergency descent, the use of autopilot and auto-thrust is highly recommended. When in idle thrust, high speed and with speed brake extended, the rate of descent is approximately 7,000 feet per minute. To descend from flight level 390 to flight level 100, it takes approximately 4 minutes and 40 nautical miles. Item number 1. Crew oxygen mask use. As both pilots are wearing oxygen masks, they have to establish communication between them. Item number 2. Signs on. Done by pilot monitoring and checked by pilot flying. Item number 3. Emergency descent, initiate, means, to perform the immediate action, the first step. Done by pilot flying and checked by pilot monitoring. The pilot flying starts on the FCU, selecting an altitude below the current one and pulling the knob to fly in open descent mode, followed by the same action with the heading knob, pulling it and selecting any suitable left or right heading and pulling the speed knob to control speed. The TCAS mode selector must remain on the TARA position. Avoidance of collision has the priority, even if it requires one temporary interruption of the descent maneuver. The TARA TCAS mode enables a maximum protection against collision. Item number 4. If auto-thrust is not active, thrust levers, idle. Item number 5. Speed brakes, full. At high flight levels, the flight crew should extend the speed brakes while monitoring the VLS. This is in order to avoid the activation of the angle of attack protection, which may result in the automatic retraction of the speed brakes and in autopilot disconnection. Once the descent has started and last memory items performed, it is the time to start the second flow to adjust the selected values exactly. The flight crew has to take into the consideration obstacles below the flight path and set 10,000 feet, preferably or Maya or Mora, whichever is higher. The precision selection of the heading has to be done based on the consideration of the local rules and terrain profile if it is a factor. Also, the aircraft structural damage has to be considered and speed set accordingly. Mainly it means to keep Mach speed setting or indicated airspeed selection. The memory items should be finished by the pilot flying calling for emergency descent procedure, which has to be read from ECAM or QRH. Emergency descent call out by pilot flying. Crew oxygen masks use by both pilots. Signs on by pilot monitoring. Emergency descent initiate by pilot flying. Flight mode from FMA announce by pilot flying and confirmed by pilot monitoring. Passenger via passenger address emergency descent announcement by pilot flying. If auto thrust in not active, thrust levers idle by pilot flying. Speed brakes full by pilot flying. Wish you never need this procedure anywhere else than at the simulator lesson.